New Testament, John 15. Today it does mark the series finale of our parenting series. And if you have been attending and you are a parent, I really do hope that this series has been encouraging and affirming, but also challenging for you. And if you've been sitting there just saying, I'm not a parent, and this series does not really relate to me directly, I still hope that it has been encouraging for you. The reason why is because every single relationship, while they may be different in nature, there's so much overlap with every single relationship. And so I think it's absolutely possible to kind of extract relationship principles and to apply those principles in other relationships as well. But secondly, if you're sitting and you're an aspiring parent, I'd really encourage you to put some of this in your back pocket, because there will come a day when you will hear the most frightening words from a nurse. It's time to go home now with your baby. And when that day comes, you're gonna wanna just remember just one thing from this series. Okay, and so parent or not, I hope it has been an encouragement to you. For me, as I've been watching this series unfold, personally, I've been really encouraged. The reason why is because our church's theme this year is on mission. Like, if you're joining us for the first time, on mission is really our heartbeat, where we want to orient our lives just away from simply our desires and our purpose, and instead attach our desires to the desires of God. Because God is He's unfolding something. He's unfolding a plan for the world. And if you're anything like me, sometimes we can just so often cave in just on our own little lives. And so this year, the kind of ethos of our church is, what is God up to? What does God want to do in the world? And so to that end, we've been journeying in the book of Acts. We're going to continue Acts next Sunday. Furthermore, we've planted a church in La Paz, Honduras, and we're through Compassion sponsoring children. We've sent out 4 mission teams kind of all over the world, and they're coming back. One came back this week. One is coming back tonight. And so there's awesome stuff happening, but I wonder if there's a temptation for us in the midst of all that to be like, that's great, but why are we then suddenly in this parenting series? Right? Because I'm on board with all this on mission stuff, and it seemed like we just took this sharp right turn, and suddenly we're talking about parenting, really? And others of us were like, no, you don't understand. I'm really glad that we're taking a break from being on mission. I'm really glad we're taking a break from being missional, because as a parent, this is my felt need. This is what I really care about. And so what starts happening is that in our minds, there may have been a subtle temptation to compartmentalize parenting over here and an on mission over there, as if they have no correlation or relationship. Where being on mission is something that happens out there. It happens in Honduras. It happens in another country. It happens in kind of a localized event like VBS, but it doesn't have anything else to do with parenting, when in fact it does. Because being on mission is not just over there, but it also encompasses every single part and corner of our lives, including the very place that's most near and dear to us, in our own families, in our own homes. Like, could I propose an idea? Have you ever considered that for the majority of us in this room, the greatest spiritual impact you and I may ever leave in the world is not gonna be some unique role in the church. It's not gonna be through some exciting parachurch ministry, but the greatest spiritual impact the majority of us will leave is actually the spiritual impact that we make on our children. The molding that we do every single day. Have you considered that that's the biggest spiritual legacy most of us, you and I, are gonna leave behind? Because can I just share this? I'm a dad of 3 very young children, 5 and under. First service, I said 3 young lizards, and so I had to correct myself. It's 3 young children. And even at a young age, I am astonished by their sponges. They absorb things whether I know it or not. Just like a month ago, I was trying to get my 2 kids ready to go to this event. And for me, I have this control issue when it comes to time, right? Like if I'm late, it's gonna make me look bad, and so I'm gonna ruin everyone else around me. I have this control issue. And so, I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, let's go guys, let's get ready. And the newborn is like a week old, and he's crying, and I'm sweating, right? Because there's no AC in the house, because my wife just gave birth, and so there's no AC allowed, and so I'm stressed out. And in the midst of that, I said this word came speeding out of my mouth, which I originally was gonna say, but my wife told me not to say this word publicly because a prudent wife is from the Lord according to Proverbs. And so I didn't, right? And so I said this word, and I could hear from the other side of the house, my son saying, "Mommy, what does blank mean?" And I was like, oh my gosh, like this, I'm in a sitcom. Like this is a real life comedy, a tragic comedy. You know what event I was trying to take my 2 older kids to? VBS. Okay, so that was a real shipwreck, okay? Some of you guys will get that later. Oh, shipwreck, that was the theme of VBS. But you know, they're sponges. But you know, even on a positive note, right? Like my wife and I, we try to do this thing where every night we'll try to do a little Bible story, which they never pay attention to. We sing a stanza of a hymn, and we do this thing called prayer of blessing, where they'll sit on my lap, and I'll place my hand over them, and I'll pray this prayer of blessing. And for our 9-year anniversary, my parents, they took the children on a sleepover. It was the best anniversary gift you've ever gotten. Like, just take them, thank you. And my dad told me afterwards that at night when they were getting ready to go to sleep, my 2.5-year-old daughter goes over to my dad, you know, her grandpa, and she placed her hands. You know, I haven't even finished telling the story. It could be something really bad on a stove. No, she placed her hands over his head, and she acted like she was mouthing something. And then she said, "Amen." And she was doing this prayer of blessing, and I'm just amazed that these little lizards, children, they just soak up everything, whether I know it or not, whether I like it or not. Now, some of us, we're parents of teenagers, and so you're sitting there saying, "I remember those days." Because now everything that you say seems to bounce right off. But you know, can we just be honest? We know the truth about the relationship between children and parents, right? You know what God's sense of humor is? Every child eventually becomes like their parent. Every child becomes like mom and dad. We resist, but it just happens, right? Like there are things that I told, my parents would say, "You're gonna be just like me." And I would say, "No, I'm gonna be the opposite of you." Today, I am a carbon copy of my parents on certain things. It's disgusting. Right? Like I'm like, did I really say that? Like that was mom. That was my inner mom just coming out. Did I really do that? It's crazy how profound of an impact parents actually have on their children. Peter Scazzaro in Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, here's what he says. While we are affected by powerful external events and circumstances through our earthly lives, our families, they are the most powerful group to which we will ever belong. Even those who left home as young adults, determined to break from their family histories, they soon find that their family's way of doing life follows them wherever they go. It's true. It's true. The biggest impact you and I may ever leave will be the daily molding that we do on our children. This is why the poet William Ross Wallace, he said that the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. How will we impact the world? Through the very child that we formed. This is why Mother Teresa, she said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. There will come a time when our daily little sayings, our little mannerisms, the environment that we've created in the home will reverberate for our children for their future. It will show up in their marriages. It will show up in their conflict resolution, their coping mechanisms, the way they view the church, the way they view God. It will all show up. To put it another way, we're doing discipleship in the home. Whether we like it or not, it's not a matter of if or when, but how. We are, by all that we do and say, either leading them towards kind of this God centrality by the grace of God, or through various circumstances and even their misunderstanding away from God. There's so much on the line here. But see, this is why parenting is so difficult, right? Because even if you take kids out of the equation, could we just agree, not even making and forming disciples, but just being a disciple is hard enough. Can we agree with that? Being a Christian is difficult. There are people to forgive. There are people to love. There are contentment issues that we're trying to deny, and there's acts of righteousness that we're trying to pursue. We're trying to be on mission. Life is already difficult as a Christian. And then you throw in the busyness of life. Some of us, we're very busy. There are responsibilities. Our boss stresses us out. right? Or our employees stress us out. Just there are so many challenges. And so when you throw in the factors of you're already a disciple trying to follow Jesus, and by the way, you're really busy, and then on top of that, let's throw in these little people who are just there all the time, just soaking in and absorbing everything that you're doing. Parenting is a challenge. If you're sitting here and you're the parent of a newborn like my wife and I, you have just entered a zombie apocalypse. And you are the zombie, right? Just sleeping through the night, and sleepwalking through the night. Your mom is just a milk-making machine. The dad has a brain capacity of a zombie, right? Just like sleep. That's it, right? If you're the parent of a toddler, you try to be patient, but you can only say, "It's time to go now," patiently, so many times. I mean, leaving Target, it's slow motion. Right? It's just like, am I in line at Disneyland? It's just taking forever. If you're the parent of a teenager, you understand adolescence is difficult. You understand puberty and social media, it's challenging. But sometimes the disrespect, just the flat out disrespect, right? Dad, just download the app. It's 2018, not 1818, right? Mom, you're such a noob. We're like, what is a noob? What is the scientific term called a noob? If you're the parent of a college student, so it's like, okay, you want me to pay for everything, but have full independence. And then after college, they come back home. And it's like, you still want full independence, but you just want free rent. Parenting is challenging. So here's my question for us as we conclude the series, is how are we gonna do this thing well? How do we do this well? If the stakes are so high, how do we make this work? How? Because let's just be honest, for a lot of us, and I know we've been encouraged by this series, but in like 2 months, we're gonna forget a lot of the things that we've learned. So when 2 months go by and life gets stressful, and things get busy, and you're trying to be a disciple, and your children act out, how do we do that then? And if you're not a parent or an aspiring one, in the very relationships that you're trying to influence for good, towards godliness, how are you going to do that? Well, I believe that the words of Jesus will serve as a word of encouragement and challenge for us, because, the words that we're about to read are actually found in the context of Jesus giving kind of his last final teaching before he would take the cross. And so for the disciples who have journeyed with Jesus for the last 3.5 years, their question would be, wait, you keep telling us that you're going to die, but for the last 3.5 years, we've done these amazing ministry things with you. But if you leave, how are we going to be able to do those things? How are we going to do those things? And so it's directly into that fear that Jesus gives these words. And I believe it will speak to us. I'm just going to be honest. In some ways, the words that we're about to read, it has nothing to do with parenting. And yet, in some ways, it has everything to do with parenting. And not just parenting, but for all of life. So look with me in John 15, verse 4. Jesus says, "Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." So what Jesus is talking about here, he's describing the procedure or the process or the mechanism for how a Christian can kind of bear certain results, Christian results, not according to human standards, not according to human metrics, but according to what God desires. There are things that God desires to produce and bear in the life of a Christian and in the church. This is why Jesus, he uses the term fruit. Now, this word fruit in the New Testament, when we connect it to results, Christian results, it has a wide range of definitions, of possibilities in the New Testament. So for example, in Galatians 5, it's talking about Christ-like characteristics, the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, and etc. But then you go to Romans 1:13, And Paul uses the word fruit to talk about Christian conversion, people coming to meet Jesus. Other interpreters, they actually describe that same passage not as conversion, but as financial fundraising. So there's this wide range meaning and possibilities for the kinds of things that God wants Christians to produce. At all times, it is Christ-like characteristics. Sometimes it might be conversion. Other times, God wants to produce even financial fundraising. So surely if the word fruit can have such a wide range of application in the New Testament, we would think that godly parenting for fruit, for results, could certainly fit in that range of applications, as well as just positive influence overall. But how? Jesus says that in order to produce that fruit that God desires to bear in and through us, the mode or the means to accomplish that is to abide in him. Abide in him. Other translations, it says to remain in him. But what does it mean to abide in Jesus? What does it mean to remain in Jesus? Well, if you take that word and if you do a lexical dictionary study and you go as deep as possible into the deepest depths of the lexical definition, it has the sense of staying in a certain location. It means dwelling, residing, lodging in a certain location and not leaving that place. So the imagery is, when you tell your kids, hey, go to your room and stay there. That's abiding. That's abiding. Stay right where you are, right? In the parking lot, whenever we leave a restaurant or anywhere, we tell our kids, stay close, stick like glue. Stick like glue. Don't go anywhere. Stick like glue. That's all abiding. Remaining, staying in a location. Now, here's the issue that Jesus is not a location. He's not a room where you could just go in and sit down. So how do we abide, stay in the location of Jesus? Well, Jesus is not a place, but he is a person, meaning he has a personhood. He has relational capacity. So then the transferring application to Jesus would be that we should stay relationally connected, to be in contact with Jesus, to be tethered to him, to be connected to him, to stay in the Wi-Fi range of Jesus. I'll put it this way, it's one thing when at the end of the day, at the end of work or school, you come home and you have a conversation with your family members and you say, how was your day? That's one thing. It's another thing at 3 p.m. to be in contact with that same family member and to say, how are you doing? See, the prior was an update. It was an update after life has already been lived. But the latter, it was not an update. It was a communion, a connectedness as life was being lived. Very different. Commentator William Barclay, he describes abiding in this way. I love how he puts it. He says, abiding means a constant contact with him. It will mean arranging life, arranging prayer, arranging even silence in such a way that there is never a day when we give ourselves a chance to forget him. Abiding means that it's not 3 p.m. and we're like, oh my goodness, I haven't even totally forgot about Jesus. Abiding means that it's 3 p.m. and you are stressed out, and at that moment you can say, Jesus, I'm so stressed out. I don't have much to say, but I acknowledge you. I want to be connected to you relationally. So what Jesus is saying here is, if you want to bear the fruit, the results that God desires to bear in and through you in all spheres, including parenting, what he's saying is you need to be relationally connected to me. Stay right with me. Don't leave me. Be tethered to me. See, I don't know about you, but I struggle with simplistic answers. I don't like Christian cliche simplistic answers, right? Like, just pray about it or just trust God. I know it's true, but just personally, the way that I'm wired, I really struggle with it. But doesn't this seem simplistic though, what Jesus is saying? Doesn't it just sound like he's saying, look, if you really want to produce what God wants, we have to stay connected. Doesn't it seem like that's what he's saying? I don't do botany, okay? But I just know that if you take a branch and you rip it off a tree and you leave it on the ground, you're not gonna come back months later to a teeming branch with oranges all over it. That's not gonna happen. The reason why is because a branch, in and of itself, it does not have the self-sustaining power through which it can produce fruit. It doesn't. The only way a branch can produce anything is it has to be attached to something else which does have self-sustaining power, which can resource, which can empower, which can give life to something beyond itself to the degree so much power that that thing can even start to bear fruit. Jesus is saying you and I, we're like the branches. Apart from him, we have nothing inside of us, nothing wired where we can actually produce anything that God desires. But Jesus, he's the vine. He's that self-sustaining person with all power and all glory. All the resources that we need, it's in him. And so if we just tether to him, if we connect with him, there's power that we gain from him. That's just what I see. So here's the implication. Have you ever considered that maybe in parenting, yes, we should be close to our children, but maybe we should even be closer to Jesus? That yes, we should invest in the relationship we have with our children, but maybe even more so in the relationship that we have with Jesus. Like, have you ever considered the best thing that you can do for your children is not just to spend more time with them and do more quality time, but what if it's actually to get more quality time with Jesus? We're actually in this book and we see him and we're actually honest with him about what's really going on inside. And we just try to do this awkward thing called Christian community. And we stay in the location, relationally connected to Jesus. See, I wonder if some of us, we have started to think that we're the vine, our children are the branches, and their college education and their future job, that's the fruit. Now, it is true that they need us. Our children do need us. But maybe we need to slide over the imagery just a little bit more to see that our children do need us, but we need Jesus way more than our children even need us. You know, if I could ask us the question this morning, are you abiding in Jesus? Like, have you been relationally connected to him? And not like, well, of course, I mean, I'm here at church, aren't I? No, like if I asked you afterwards, how's your relationship with Jesus? How's that going? Like, would that question be almost like, whoa, like that's too spiritual? Like, as if I asked you to describe your relationship with your toothbrush. Or would it be like this, I know exactly how to talk about that. In fact, I know how to talk about my relationship with Jesus like the way that I can talk about my relationship with my friends. I can tell you what season we're in. I can tell you what I'm struggling with. I can tell you what I've submitted to him and what I've not surrendered to him. Are we abiding? Can I press even a little bit deeper? This is loving discomfort, loving, okay? For the parents in here, you are courageous where you find the energy somehow to read the Bible to your children, especially young children. But do you yourself get in this book? How about this one? For those of us parents who are like, I love this church because the CE department is amazing, and it is because we have amazing leaders and volunteers. But if we didn't have an amazing CE, if we didn't have KKC Musical, would you come here for you? To hear the proclamation of the King and to say, I want to be connected to him. See, I have this fear for us. Our church it's an amazing church. So many resources. Go to Gen Z, and we need it. But my fear is that in the midst of all that, somehow we're going to exclude loving Jesus deeply because we have all the resources. And somehow Jesus gets bypassed in the equation. Have you noticed, parenting is, if the stakes are so high, have you noticed how few Bible passages there really are about parenting? Have you ever thought about that? Like, you would think the Holy Spirit could have included one more verse, just one more key verse. No. Why? It's as if the entire law is just summarized in love God and love neighbor, and so ultimately, we're corralled into relationship with him. He draws us to himself. It's almost like he's saying, I know you want to know the principle. What you need is relationship with the person. You need me. Why? Why does abiding matter so much? Two things really quickly, and then story time, okay? The first thing that happens, I believe, when we abide and stay relationally connected with him is when we're connecting with Jesus, we receive an accurate reflection of our divine parent. We receive an accurate reflection of our divine parent. In the Gospel of John, I don't have too much time to get into this, Jesus said profound things like this. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. What he's saying is, you see what I'm like? That's an exact replica and representation of what God the Father is like. Now, here's why that's profound. As a parent, what is our goal? Our goal is to try to display the most imperfect picture of a perfect God, God the Father. What we're saying is, look, whatever I'm trying to do here, it's trying to point to what God is like. So how do we gain a picture of the perfect parent? Well, we have to see God the Father. But how do we see God the Father? See the Son. You see the Son, you get the Father. You see the Father, you get the perfect model of a parent. You want the perfect model of a parent? You need to see the Father. You want to see the Father? You have to see the Son. But when we connect with Jesus, we receive an accurate reflection of our divine parent. Here's the second thing that abiding does. When we're connecting with Jesus, we receive divine rest from our Father. Divine rest from our Father. If you are anything like me, oh my goodness, a mess. There's this propensity where I believe that I'm not the parent of my children, but I'm God. That I'm sitting on the throne and I control their every little thing. Like, don't play with that toy. We're gonna sleep right now. You need to fall asleep, close your eyes. Boom, there it is. And I have this propensity for control. But here's what happens when I abide. I start to relax. Why? Because I'm reminded that God is not asking me to be God in the lives of my children, but he's asking me to be a parent who points them to God. And so that relaxes me to not be hurried, not be stressed out all the time, but to just breathe. Because see, sometimes I wonder for some of us, we've mistaken ourselves to be God in the lives of our parents. So we have to control every little detail, and I'm gonna plan this out and map this out, and we need to go here and make sure that happens. And so what happens is we become this hurried, panicking parent where we tell our children God is in control, but it really does not look like that in their eyes. My third born is like almost 2 months old. There's very small margin, free time. There's no free time, right? My free time is when I use the bathroom, okay? And what I've discovered is, I shouldn't have said that. What I've discovered is, if I get 4 hours of sleep, but I abide, I open the book, and I'm talking to him throughout the day, I am so relaxed. But if I get a few more hours of sleep, but I wake up in a panic and I'm trying to do a bunch of stuff and I forfeit my time with him, I'm just more hurried, more impatient. When we're connecting with Jesus, we receive a divine rest from our Father. Maybe what our children need most is that we desire Jesus most. As this series has been unfolding, as I've been preparing for this, I just cannot stop thinking about my own parents. I know some of us, we kept thinking about our own parents, but, just like every single mom and dad that, we've all had, my mom and dad, they were imperfect, they were flawed, but when I look back at these key crucial moments in my life, they just somehow, I think even without them knowing, they just managed to God just did certain things through them at key times that had a huge impact on me. And so I'm gonna share a couple of stories, one from when I was in junior high, one when I was in high school, and one when I was in college. And I share this not to glorify my parents, but I want you to know this abiding thing, it is real. It is not theoretical. It is deeply entrenched in reality. All right, so we'll start with a lighthearted one, and I'll see if I regret sharing this afterwards. But my brother and I, growing up, we're 6 years apart, almost 6 years. And so I was like a second dad to him at times, but when I was in junior high, my younger brother is in elementary school. At that time, we're fighting all the time, right? And I'm always winning, of course, but we're fighting, we're arguing all the time. And I remember one time my brother and I, we were arguing and fighting in our room. Now, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment for over 10 years. When we're fighting in our room, it's audible to everybody, including the next door neighbors. So him and I were arguing, we're fighting, and my dad comes in and he says, hey, guys, I'm trying to pray outside, and you guys are making way too much noise, so I need you guys to be quiet. Which I was like, why don't you just tell us to stop fighting, right? But he's like, fight quietly. I'm trying to pray. And so, we quiet down, and he leaves, but, we start fighting again. And so he comes back in, and he says, you guys need to, I'm trying to pray, please keep it down. And we're like, okay. And he leaves, and then sure enough, we start fighting again. We're making a lot of noise, we're yelling at each other. And then the door swings open again, and my dad is standing there, and his eyes, there's like fire. Some of us who have had Korean fathers, you know what I'm talking about. Your hands are clammy right now for some reason. And he walks in, and my brother and I, we just go completely silent. And he walks in and he says, we weren't ready for this one. He says, I want both of you guys to take off all your clothes right now. And we're like, okay. And here's what he says. He says, okay, now give each other a hug. And he just walks out. And, I look back and I marvel because my brother and we just started laughing. We completely forgot what we were fighting about. To this day, my brother and I are like, what were we fighting about? We have to figure this out. We have to when we take it to therapy. What happened? We don't know what we were fighting about. And to this day, I still marvel because, in terms of conflict resolution, I would not have gone that route, right? I would have used force and authority and so you stand in that corner, you stand in that corner. But just the creative humor that he used that only two brothers could have appreciated. I asked my dad, how did you get there? What was your thought process? And he was like, I was praying. I walked in and it just seemed like that was what was right. And I marvel to this day. When I was a freshman in high school, some of us, we've kind of had our wandering years, our prodigal years. For me, my freshman year of high school, that was my wandering years. And it's kind of embarrassing to say, but my grades completely tanked. As a freshman, your grades can't tank because that helps you to get into all the other classes. I was secretly dating. As some of you guys are now. And my parents knew because we didn't have cell phones back then, but when the phone would ring, I would be standing right next to the phone, like, hello, we are not interested in that program, And, but they knew, and this is so embarrassing, but I bought this little chain necklace from my friend, and I would wear it at school. But after school, I would take it off and I'd put it in my backpack because if my parents saw me wearing it, they thought I was worshiping the devil. But they knew that I was kind of veering off in this direction. And, to be honest, I don't remember, I knew we had conversations. I knew my dad, he tried to talk to me about certain things, but I don't really remember them. They didn't really have a profound impact on me. But there was this churning catalytic moment for me when I was a freshman in high school. And one morning, my mom was taking me to school. My parents, they would drop me off and I would walk home every day. But one morning, she was taking me to school and we got to our usual drop-off location. And she grabs my hands out of the blue and she starts praying out loud. And as she's praying, tears are streaming down her face. And she's just crying and praying. At that moment, the story of the prodigal son, where it says he came to his senses, right? Everything was becoming clear. You know why? As a 15-year-old or 14-year-old freshman in high school, what I thought was, it's really not about the grades. It's really not about how I make my parents look in public or at church. What I saw was my mom was so desperate for Jesus. And I remember thinking, if my mom is this desperate for Jesus, certainly I need a little bit of him too. And so I remember walking to my first period class that day, just crystal clear in my thinking. And that was a turning point for me. Still kept the chain necklace though. The last one, it was when I was a second year in college. You know, I was going through this thing in college, as a lot of college students do, where you're kind of unsure about what to do with your future. And I was feeling burnt out, and I knew I wanted to have this conversation with my dad where I said, I want to take a quarter off and just rest. But even just 10 years ago, if you ask your Asian parent for a quarter off, that's death. Like today, you can take a year off and call it a gap year. Back then, it was the death year, right? And so I knew I had to catch my dad at a good time, so I went home, and he was praying. I checked my brother's room. He wasn't there, so I was like, hey, everything's lined up well. And my dad finishes praying, and I trudged over to him, and I said, hey, we need to talk. And basically, as I was sharing everything with him, what it kind of boiled down to was I told him, I'm afraid because I don't want to disappoint you. I'm afraid of disappointing you. I'm afraid of what this will make you look like in front of other people. You know, I'm the firstborn son. I'm supposed to be an example to, my younger brother, and I'm just afraid. And I'll never forget, here's what my dad said. My dad said, you need to stop worrying about pleasing me because I'm not your true father. He said, I'm your earthly father. He said, God, he's your true heavenly father. So you have to stop worrying about how you're going to please me, and you need to be concerned about you pleasing the Father. He said, if you need to take a quarter off, do it. If you need to take a year off, you can. But you need to chase the will of your Father. It was that moment where it changed the trajectory of my life in that I realized my greatest commitment must be to follow God the Father. I ended up not taking a quarter off. And I actually ended up going back with this renewed vigor. I need to hurry up and finish undergrad, and I need to go to seminary to pursue the will of the Father. I share these stories because my parents, they were immigrants. They didn't have parenting conferences. They never read Paul Tripp's book. They and me, we had a language barrier. We had misunderstandings all the time. But here's what I knew is that they loved Jesus. They sought the kingdom first and his righteousness. And somehow at these key moments, they just God just bore fruit at those moments through them. To this day, they have no idea what those moments mean to me. And if I did tell them, they would say, oh, that it was just God. It was just God working. We didn't even realize. May we abide in Jesus. Maybe the best thing that we could do for our children is to love Jesus and pursue him more than anything else in the world. Let's do that. Let's make a commitment to do that. Let's pray. As the band comes up, I want to lead us into this one thought. What's amazing, I think the greatest miracle of this passage is not Jesus saying, abide in me. But the greatest miracle is him saying, abide in me and I in you. Meaning, when Jesus invites us to stay relationally connected to him, the implication already is, the assumption is that he's already relationally connected to us. And he desires that, and he's already accomplished that. He has brought us together with him by bridging the gap on the cross, by taking care of all of our sins, by purchasing righteousness for us. And so as you sit there, maybe some of us were deeply convicted this morning saying, oh my gosh, I've totally lost sight of Jesus. But what I want you to know is Jesus has not lost sight of you. He sees you. He desires to be with you. He desires to connect with you. He wants to pour into you, encourage you, strengthen you. And he wants you to know that he delights in you. And so the band's gonna lead us, but will you just sit there and just receive the grace of God that is present and available for us because of him every day, and his mercies are new every morning. So let's sit and let's soak him in, and then let's respond in song.